it's basically the end of the Hulkamania era, and it's the attempt to build new, younger, smaller stars and replace Hogan. It's the constant, the eternal quest to replace Hogan, and because of so it kind of, WrestleMania 8's a pretty good starting point for when it started to go that direction. For me, it's maybe a bit later than that, but the real defining one for me is King of the Ring 93, because that is the death of Hulkamania. That's Hogan came back briefly, New Generation kind of had started, but not properly, and then Hogan gets beat, gets pinned with his own move, and he's gone. And then the whole company has to rebuild without Hogan and go a completely different direction. And it was things like they'd bring in Raw, get rid of a lot of the old stuff that was there prime time. They get rid of and replace it with this new stuff, and it's slightly edgier and, like I say, younger and smaller generally. And they kind of were forced into that because of the steroid trial, where immediately anyone who looked like they were on something, whether they were or not, had to go, because the government was coming down on them real hard. They obviously couldn't be promoting people who looked like they were, jacked to the gills, and, it didn't matter who you were, as soon as Vince found out sort of Warrior and Davey Boy were taking stuff in 92, they were gone.
Because you can almost point back to, for me, I think Survivor Series 92, Rumble 93 and WrestleMania 9, they're the major...
Yeah, there's a total shift, isn't
because if you look at WrestleMania 9 compared to WrestleMania 8, no more Warrior, no more Bulldog, no more Flair. Yeah. Savage is an announcer. He's not even on the card.
Yeah. You've still got Hogan, I guess, and Perfect.
But then with Hogan, you've got Hogan, but it's a very strange... Hogan in a tag team with Brutus Beefcake felt very bizarre. Do you ever think...
Still in the belt.
Do you think there was ever a plan that he was just going to be in the tag team match with Beefcake? Or do you think all along it was, we'll say he's going to be in that, but we're ultimately just going to put it... Because it just seems mad that would be the plan. Because how can you move on from your old era? It's like if you were doing a movie franchise and you had somebody who was the star, you can't exactly change them to the semi-star and try and get something new over it while the person's still there.
It's hard. I mean, ideally what you do is use the previous generation and get over the next generation.
And that's one of the things that Bret talked about in his book, right? Bret said that he didn't get to beat Jake or Warrior or anything like that.
But he was supposed to work with all of them. So it's not really WWE's fault. Warrior was supposed to turn heel at SummerSlam 92. The idea would have then been eventually for him to work with Bret, I think, at Royal Rumble. He was supposed to, or there was plans in place for him to work with Jake over the summer of 92 for the Intercontinental title. But obviously Jake left after WrestleMania 8. And so he'd already got the rub of Piper, he'd already got off Perfect, and they were going to give him the rub from all these different guys. I don't know that he'd necessarily beat Warrior, and then obviously he was supposed to then work with Hogan and take the title from Hogan at SummerSlam 93, or he was told he was. Whether that was actually ever the plan is different.
Now, Bret says that there was a photo shoot where Bret and Hogan sort of jockeyed for the belt, and that was going to be a SummerSlam promo photo. Does that photo exist?
I have no reason to doubt Bret on that. I mean, I've never seen it. I don't know if anyone's ever seen it. It might be worth us asking Keith Greenberg about that, actually. He might know.
Shall I call him now?
We'll maybe call him later. We'll confirm next week. Or in 2 weeks.
In 2 weeks.
Or in maybe a month when we find out.
Next year, whenever.
Yeah. I mean, I would imagine it does exist. You'd think it's the kind of thing they do. I mean, why wouldn't they? Because there is a feature in one of the WWF magazines from the time of Bret versus Hogan, but it doesn't have that picture in it. It's just sort of what would happen if they faced each other, sort of thing.
Yeah. So we're talking about the stars leaving, all the people leaving. The biggest one that would end up leaving was Hogan. His last show, or his last pay-per-view was King of the Ring 93. Yeah. Even his title reign was strange because he won the title at WrestleMania 9. He did not make one title defense in WWF. He wrestled, I think, 3 times at live events in a team with Brutus Beefcake against the Beverly Brothers Money Inc.
Yeah.
One where Sergeant Slaughter was a referee, which is very bizarre.
He also did the Angle with Giant Gonzalez
at a live event,
which I think was probably the plan at one point. I wouldn't be surprised if the idea long term was Hogan, Gonzalez, maybe SummerSlam, something like that.
Yeah.
But obviously never transpired.
So he leaves. He does King of the Ring, and he does the UK tour in '93, and then leaves.
Yeah.
How big a deal is it, do you think, that he left for the new generation to kind of get started?
I think it's very hard to move past the past without, while it's still hanging around, because you've still got that generation there. I mean, ideally you do want to use that generation and get them over, and then they go. But look, Hogan leaving affected them. Of course it did. It's Hogan. He still could draw. Reducing Savage was a weird move at a time when they needed star power as well. But Vince, goes through these phases, and he decided Savage is too old to wrestle. And it's like, you look back at that now and you're like, well, you've got Goldberg on your WrestleMania this year, and you've got, Taker and whatever else. And so his mindset's shifted, I guess. But back then it was like, no, we need youth. That's the problem. We need youth. And it's like, well, that's fine. But...
And it was about building stars. So, I mean, I guess between late 92 and, say, 94, they did build Bret and Shawn and Taker and Owen Hart and Razor and Diesel when he came in. And even like guys like Marty Jannetty and the 1-2-3 Kid. There was a lot of people who they did build.
Yeah. But they were never anywhere close to the level of Jake, Warrior, Piper, Hogan.
Who would you say were in those first couple of years, who were the key stars that they were able to build from the new generation? That they were able to build because all these other guys had left?
Well, it was Bret, Yokozuna, and Shawn, I would think. Razor definitely as well, but sort of upper mid card, and Diesel.
Do you think Yokozuna doesn't get enough credit?
Probably
people
not.
Talk about him a lot.
Yeah, he probably doesn't. I mean, he was very good at being Yokozuna. The problem with him is he's very good for his size, for sure. He could move around great, for a big guy. He wasn't a plodding wrestler. Unless he couldn't be bothered, like if you watch WrestleMania 10 against Lou, I mean that's a good example of when he couldn't be bothered. But he was good, but he wasn't great, to watch. He's not going to have these classic matches or anything. And I think that kind of sort of started to train fans towards we want to see good wrestling with Bret, with matches like Bret and Bulldog and Bret and Perfect and such. And then you've got Yoko in the main event not really doing a lot. So it was a strange time, but I mean, there's obvious reasons why they went with Yoko. Like Vince likes big wrestlers, and and that to me is not a criticism either. Like it's a fact, and I think it's it's fair enough that you have your favourites, right, and your preferences. But he couldn't use jacked up guys anymore, so he went the other direction as the tallest guys and the widest guys. So all of a sudden you've got Yokozuna. You've got Giant Gonzalez, you've got, a lot of guys sort of coming in around that time who were just big. Diesel obviously is really tall, and and Sid coming back, and there's loads and loads of examples. And Vince likes size; he likes people who turn heads. So he went that direction because he was like, well, if we can't have the guys allegedly taking whatever they might be taking, we'll just go the opposite direction. Or sort of a different direction, I guess. I
mean, because the other thing that I was thinking about when we were talking about the new generation was that, so in America or in the US, everything's declining. Numbers, attendance, and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, the UK and Europe is going up. Because people like Bret and Taker were very popular. And Bulldog were very popular over here.
By 93, it kind of
they were still doing multiple tours a year in the UK. It was like, but there was like two crews touring at the same time, doing both cities, maybe 3 times a year. So they were.
It was still a novelty, though.
Yeah, it was still a novelty. But what do you think? Do you think that's all it is? That it was a novelty over here compared to in America?
They hadn't done much over here at that point, so it was still this larger than life American, big, brash, bold, colourful thing coming over, and all these stars that you recognise. But then they do things like UK Rampage 93, which is an affront to wrestling, really. And
why was that one so much worse than UK Rampage 92? Because 92 you've got Bret and Martel on Sky Sport or Sky Movies Gold, whatever it was.
Savage and
Michaels. And Shawn. It was a good show. And then 93 you've got...
Well, because half the talent's gone.
You've got no Bret on the show. Yeah. You've got no Hogan on the show.
Yeah.
There was like Mr. Perfect against Samu. Duggan and Luger. Like, what was that show all about?
Arrogance, I guess. We don't need to put out a card of any quality to get people to sell out this building, which is true until you come back, and then people are like, we've been burnt once. It's like the boy who cried wolf kind of thing, isn't it? It doesn't work if you, and like as Raw ratings kind of show, like if you keep putting on something that just isn't good or doesn't reward the viewer or whoever's paying for it, they're not going to keep coming back to it forever. There will be a point where they go, that's me, you know. And but the point is, in America, they'd been doing this thing with Hulkamania onwards for, you know, getting on for a decade. Same buildings, same loops, and monthly shows in some of these buildings. The novelty very much worn off over there, but over here we hadn't had that. You know, when did the start come over here? 89, I think, was the first time.
Yeah, that London show.
But I don't even think they came over in 90 or 91.
They came over in 91.
Oh, sorry, yes, they did. UK Rampage,
but they didn't do
and Battle Royal at the Albert Hall.
Yeah, what a show.
Great show. Well, actually, terrible show, but fun show, yeah.
Aesthetic.
And then, you know, at that point, it's like, wow, and wrestling's, you know, red hot over here, and because it's on Sky, and people have, you know, started to get Sky as well. So Sky, because it was a big part of Sky's promotional package when it launched over here. So, you know, you had Premier League football and you had WWF, really, and it was like, wow, and movies.
And they managed to get 80,000 people into Wembley.
Yeah, they were on fire, but by 93, certainly by 94, that had died down. I mean, they were always popular over here.
Because, you know, I guess 94 was the last year where, like, the Hasbro figures were out. It was, like, late 94.
Yeah.
So things were starting to go down. How important do you think, by them getting rid of primetime wrestling and doing Raw, was that? Do you think if they just stuck with primetime and tried to do a new generation through the old methods, that would have gone better for them, worse for them?
Probably not. I mean, you need to reinvent sometimes, and Raw was fun and interesting and different. The only problem with Raw, because of as much as we love the Manhattan Center and the aesthetic of it and everything, it did make them look small time. It did. You know, when you're used to these big arenas, these big, and it just looked like the way they used to shoot it looked like a sea of people that went on forever. You know, because they used to darken the crowd and everything. Whereas, you know, you see Raw and you can see every face and hear every one person chanting. It was so different then to what we were used to from WWF that it probably did make them look small time, even though it was probably a necessary thing, because look, they couldn't draw every week everywhere anymore because they didn't have the star power to do it. And, you know, and obviously there was that big stink around the company because of the steroid thing. So it was kind of a necessary evil, Raw, really.
So thanks for watching the video. If you want to support the channel, you can sign up to our sponsor, ExpressVPN. ExpressVPN means that when you go online, your data is 100% secure no matter what you do on the web. And if you maybe want to watch Canadian Netflix or American Hulu, ExpressVPN have servers in over 100 different countries. We have this amazing Black Friday deal available where you can get 49% off, and the deal is available all the way through to December 14th. All you need to do to sign up is go to itrwrestling.com/VPN.